for a live video, and today we are talking electronics. This is a topic that I've tried to stay away from, but I'm just gonna keep it on the light side. If you want to get into the debate of whether you should have all electronics, that's for a different channel, not for this channel. As far as using it to its best capability, that we could talk about.
Yeah, definitely.
I do want to start off with basically what electronics we're going to talk about, which is going to be mapping, 2D, down scan, side scan, and then forward scan. What for mapping? What do you run currently?
I run Lowrance, definitely with Navionics chip in it. Currently.
And I also run Navionics. I do not run the level you run though.
What do you mean?
Sure you have. I don't have like an updated card.
Oh yeah, I have an updated card.
I just have a single on that.
Though fishing with other people, and there is one mapping that I really do enjoy looking at. Fishing with other people, looking at other different units, and that's the Hummingbird with the Lake Masters.
Yeah.
Map, because they could do so much with their mapping by changing colors of depths and stuff like that. You could do that with the Lowrance, but you don't get as detail and as much with the Lowrance as you do with the Hummingbird.
Yeah, your color shading, you can color shade with Lowrance, but you can't color shade as much as the Hummingbird.
Correct.
I haven't got to play with Hummingbird myself, but it's definitely something that's good.
With the mapping, a lot of it is you got, these companies that are coming out here and they're doing these map cards, right, and putting them out there, and there's some that have done a better job in some aspects of that.
Different lakes.
For example, Berryessa on the east side, there's creeks that run out, right, from that east side. Well, in Hummingbird, you could see the creeks all the way out.
Yeah.
Without trying to find them. Lowrance, even if you have the updated card, you know that there was a creek there.
Yeah, but it doesn't show you the full contours.
But it doesn't show you that full contours of that creek, which would benefit you in some of the tournaments, right? Where you were needing to get offshore and moving out. That would be a benefit for you.
Which if you follow like the pro level, they carry like at the console, the people who aren't confined to one specific brand, they have one Lowrance and one Hummingbird.
Yeah. For
multiple different reasons. One of them is map cards. And then the other reason is the rest of the electronics we'll get into.
Yeah.
There are certain lakes it does not matter who you have, like Rollins Lake. It doesn't matter who you have.
It's the same.
Your card is junk, basically. Like I think on Navionics it's every 20 feet. And then on Hummingbird, the one that I saw, it was like every 40 foot or something like that.
Yeah, there's some lakes that they just don't go to that often, so you're not getting that up to date.
It's a 900 acre surface area lake. Like they're not spending a ton of money on that lake, and you can map it yourself. That is the one cool thing about Lowrance, is you can actually make your own map by driving over and creating enough data points that it can make its own map.
Yeah.
I think Garmin can do that, but Hummingbird cannot. I believe Garmin can also. You can kind of create your own map if you have a small lake that you do that, and you could do that with a kayak, you could do that with a boat.
Whatever you're using,
Yeah, it's just about data points on a map, basically.
But yeah, no, having those 1 foot contours though, even with the Lowrance, It definitely will help you out. It definitely like tell you something about what you're fishing, right? It
Yeah.
will help draw you to a area that if you want a steeper bank, you could look at it and it is definitely darker, right? You all those lines put together way closer. It looks like a like a permanent mark on it instead of just pencil lines. And then once you zoom in, you can see the 1 foot contours and you're like, okay, this is a good drop off here. Hey, it's 20 foot down, but there's a good drop off right here. Maybe that's something we should look at. And then start using the other electronics like we're going to get into a little bit later.
Yeah, years ago, this is back when I only had 2D, no side scan in my dad's boat. Looking at his mapping, there was some areas on Berryessa where I got on a bite that it had to be between 30 and 40 foot, and I needed a drop off, like a fairly steep drop off. And I was able to use that mapping to find like 4 different areas and then go fish those 4. Actually, I found 6 or 7, to be fair, but only 4 of them produced. But I was able to find those spots, and to this day, I still fish 2 of those spots now. Like, they are continually holding fish, and those are spots that I found literally from mapping and 2D.
Right.
Now that I know what they look like with side scan, I had most of it right, but I definitely didn't have it completely right. Because like on 2D, it looked like there was branches, or like there was like a branch, but it was just that cone picking up the edge of the drop off.
Right.
And now that I can see it with side scan, and then even with using down scan, the down scan cleans up that edge so that it doesn't look like it's a tree. It actually shows you where the hard contours are. Because the down scan's cone is smaller than 2D.
Correct.
So that's why if you want to be over deep water and you're just kind of looking in the area, 2D is amazing. If you want to actually look at the details, down scan's for dialing it in.
Correct. I use downscan too a lot of the times to, if you run the 2D and the downscan right next to each other, and you look at both of them. When you see that mark on the bottom, and you're like, that might be a fish, right? And then you look at that downscan, you see only a dot there. That's telling you, hey, there's that bladder, that air bladder of that fish. That is definitely a fish. You could correlate the two together to help that out.
Yeah, you can eliminate is that a tree branch? Is that whatever it is, a rock? It can definitely clarify that out.
Correct. Another thing to go back to the mapping part is if you really want to get into the weeds and stuff like that, you could go onto like Google Earth Pro and go in there, and once you get into Google Earth Pro and you'll Google and look to see like whatever lake you're fishing. Say like Berryessa.
By rolling the time back, as we were talking about.
Correct. And Google when was the lake the lowest, and then go and search Google Earth at that time frame and see what pictures they got for Google Earth, and then trying to find all those rock piles, those drop offs, anything that is different that's out there that you wouldn't really see currently. Like right now the lake's full, and then you could actually put a chip in there and mark those spots, put it into your Lowrance, save those waypoints, and then actually go out there and look at it with the rest of your electronics, right? And help find those spots on spots that you really want to fish.
Like the first time we ever fished Don Pedro, I had over 200 waypoints on Don Pedro, and I've never even put a boat in the water or been on the water at Pedro. And that's just from using Google Earth.
Yeah.
That actually ended up being like...
Paid off.
It paid off. He ended up basically winning the tournament from one of those spots that we probably only would have known about because of Google Earth and using the waypoints and stuff like that.
Right.
So, and then I caught my fish off the same kind of stuff. So it's definitely something that you shouldn't overlook, especially if you're trying to get familiar with a lake. And then to bring up like Rollins, they only drop like 10 foot in a year. Like if you look at their lowest water level, it doesn't show up versus their highest. So you can't use that on every lake. But there are lakes, especially California lakes, that you can use Google Earth to take advantage of that. And then you just simple YouTube search or Google search, it'll tell you how to make waypoints and how to do that. There's plenty of videos out there that explain all of that process.
Correct.
Do you have anything for 2D?
2D. So 2D is a thing. So I will take it towards like sturgeon fishing. It's like every 10 foot is a 3-foot circle. So when you're driving and you're going, say if you're in 20 foot of water, you're only getting a 6-foot circle underneath the boat. So basically whatever your boat width is what you're seeing. So when I first started sturgeon fishing and we were searching for fish, we were zigzagging in the sloughs and trying to find those fish. So just think about that 2D, right? Like, do I still run 2D? Absolutely, right? Like, you can still find fish. You still catch fish off of it.
I still catch fish with having forward scan. I still catch fish off of 2D.
Correct. Because sometimes that 2D picks up more than that forward scan does too, right?
It's way more effective for if you're trying to drop shot straight down or just spoon straight down. 2D is way more effective than forward scan is.
Correct. But that's something to think about, right? If you're just running a 2D, if you're in 20 foot of water, you're only looking at a 6-foot path.
Yeah. You're
not looking at anything more.
Yeah, you got to be, it's only deep, it's better in deeper water. And then, like I said, down scan is even tighter than that. I don't remember the math on down scan.
No, I don't remember either.
But it is a slightly smaller cone.
Right.
There's like a sliver of cone that basically that they don't interlap, which you can use your advantage. If you can see a fish come on 2D and it doesn't show up on down scan, that means it's on the outside edges. Where on that outside edge, I don't know. But you can, like as you're going down the bank, you can actually see a fish come on 2D first and then come on down scan. And then you can actually tell, like, okay, I'm coming towards that fish. But if you see something just come up on 2D only and then drop away, you probably shaved the sides of it. Like you drove over it and it barely clipped it.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for like a tree or something like that, it'll tell you, it doesn't say which direction to go, but you can use it to know that you're off a little bit. You need to move over.
Right. What's up, Camel Joe?
What's happening, Camel Joe?
I kind of already talked about the down scan part of it, right?
Yeah.
Like correlating the two together. One of the things is like down scan, the frequency is so high that you're not picking up like the fish like you would on a 2D. Yeah. You're going to mainly be hitting that air bladder that's in that fish, and that's what's actually going to be pinging back, right, to get that read. So there is a definite difference when you're looking at it to what the fish looks like in between the two. Yeah. And it helps identify those fish. Even in cover, it helps identify those fish out if you're using both of them at the same time. Yeah, because let's say you get into a tree and there's crappie inside those tree or there's bass stacked up inside that tree. On 2D, it just looks like a whole bunch of lines and globs and all sorts of stuff. But on down scan, you can actually see the dots, individual dots out of it that come up on the screen as it's scrolling across. Correct. But that helps just pull everything out. And once you get your eye trained, it helps so much. It helps put everything together and make sense, right? When you're looking at something, or give you confidence, right? Like, hey. Yeah, there's a bunch of like bumps on the bottom on the 2D. Maybe those are rocks, maybe those are fish. And then when you look at it on the down scan, you're like, well, those are little dots now. Yeah. Those are fish on the bottom. Yeah, it can, like everyone basically says like, oh, forward scans, all this stuff. But realistically, I would say that my number one thing would be mapping. Yep. My number two thing would be probably side scan. Yep. And then once I actually find the spots, then you come to forward scan.
you're not just going to go hunt down an entire lake
with forward scan.
With forward scan. It's just not going to work.
It's not a thing.
There's very, very, very few times of the year that you can actually do that.
Yeah.
We can get into side scan.
Yeah, let's do side scan.
Oh, what's happening, Marlon? Side scan is really good for understanding how things lay out. Like you saw the mapping, you saw the drop off, you saw that it has like a bend to it. But then you can go over that with side scan and see that not only was there a bend to it, but there's actually a little tree in the corner of that little bend in that drop off in 40 foot of water. Whatever it was. So when I originally found one of my drop offs on Berryessa, I thought it had a tree on it because of the way it was. Once I got side scan, I actually realized that it's because the bank actually went out and then cupped under and came back and went out. So there's actually like an undercut. Side scan showed me the undercut, but on 2D, I just thought it was like a tree branch or something, like a log that got stuck in there.
Right.
So that side scan it really helps you understand how everything lays out underneath the water.
Correct. And another way that we used side scan for, say, like Lake Rollins, we found fish in the back of a spot that he's shown in other videos. And with the side scan, we were looking and there was actually a creek that came in and it forked underwater. And those fish were moving bait around and sitting in that creek and ambushing them. We were able to on side scan. So now this is another thing, like Lowrance has touchscreen for almost every unit they have, almost every unit. Anything that is up above a hook, they have touchscreen. It's great because you could look at it, touch a screen, mark it, touch the screen, mark it, touch the screen, mark it, and map out those creeks, and then just spend the rest of the day fishing the creeks.
Yeah.
Right? We won a tournament doing that exactly, right?
Yeah.
So I know like Hummingbird, I haven't really messed with Garmin side scan, but a Hummingbird, I really do like finding fish and stuff with the side scan on Hummingbirds. It definitely is a little clearer to me on the fish compared to Lowrance. But unless you go with a Solex for a Hummingbird, you don't get touchscreen. You have to get the top of the line to get a touchscreen. And so now you're using a cursor to try to mark everything.
Yeah, and arrows and cursors.
Yeah,
and all this other stuff.
I don't want to do that. But finding the fish, I've done that a few times, Lake Comanche, with a Hummingbird, marking out where these fish are, going after them that way, and winning tournaments also. The other thing about side scan too, like I was talking about sturgeon fishing when we had that 6 foot cone, especially since sturgeon fishing's closed now. I'll talk about it.
Yeah, now that you can't sturgeon.
Game changer. When you're able to go and drive straight down the middle of the slough and have 100 feet out each side, you can see where the sturgeon are. Are they on the shallow side or on the deep side? And I only have to make one pass.
Are they high? Are they low? Are they like you can drive right down the slough, right down the middle, and as you're driving down that with your side scan, you know you don't have to do any double backs, you don't have to do any turnarounds, you don't have to do anything. You just go. And then you drive through a hole, don't really like, you pick up, you drive off, you set it back down again, drive through that hole, and then within an hour you can run all the holes.
Yep.
Of one slough, basically, and you know where the best concentration of fish are, or of sturgeon are, because the best thing about sturgeon is they're so freaking big.
Yeah, they look like logs.
You don't have to go slow. You can actually idle them faster and just pick up where they're at. And then the other thing with them is there was one time where we went into one of the holes and it was just dinosaurs in there. They were giant.
Yeah.
I swear you could see the diamonds on their sides on that side scan. It was that big of a freaking sturgeon.
I actually have some pictures I took of them where you could see the fish. You could almost see the head. You could see the fins. It's crazy what you
Yeah.
could see. And that's with the Lowrance, right? Like I said, I really think that the Humminbird is a better side scan unit. But with the Lowrance, I'm still not gonna buy a Humminbird, me personally, right? But it definitely showed some stuff. And another thing that it showed me, and that I never thought of, I always thought, you know, like sturgeon were slow and just like cruised with the tide, and then if they smelt something, they turned around, kicked up, and ate it.
Yeah.
Side scan changed my whole thinking of what they're doing. They're actually floating backwards. So when the tide's going, their head's down here, tail's up here,
Current's
and
going this way.
yep, and they're just going like this. If they find something, they just kick up and eat it. So that's why, like, I never understood, like, you know, you get that tail whack on the rod where
you see the rod go down, but it doesn't hook up.
yeah,
That's why.
because the tail's actually hitting first. The fish hasn't even, if it's a big enough fish, the fish hasn't even got to the scent yet.
And that's how you can get foul hooked, where
Yeah.
you hook them in the belly or you hook them in the fin or whatever it is. It's because that thing is scooting back, right? And those tail whacks it. You set the hook on it. It puts that hook into them. It hasn't even got to the head yet. So you almost have to kind of wait for it a little bit. But then sometimes they get hung up on that fin and it takes that rod down. You're not going to question it. You're just going to swing.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, you have a
70-inch fish.
estimated 13-foot fish
Yeah.
that's
Not
hooked,
hooked in the mouth.
that's damn near tail hooked and spools you a couple times.
Yeah, that's
and
happened.
you literally get done getting that fish in and just kind of sit there and go,
I'm done.
well, it's only 10, but we can go home now.
Yeah.
Like, it kicked our butt.
And yes, a lot of our sturgeon fishing that we did, Marlin, was in Sassoon Slough.
Yeah.
We've won a lot of money in Sassoon Slough.
Yeah.
Doing the sturgeon bowl and stuff like that. We posted one of the videos that we did in there, but we've won multiple times money and caught a lot of fish in Sassoon Slough, and kind of sad that that fishery is not fishable anymore.
Yeah. From what I understand, it's shut down. I don't know if it's officially shut down, but I know they're shutting it down.
Yeah.
So,
But yes, Sassoon Slough was the spot.
there was something else.
Yep. Go
Forward scan. We're gonna get to forward scan.
Yeah. It is right down the street from the house.
Yes. Yeah. You're not that far from it.
Yeah.
So it is shut down. Yeah. So, yeah. Not only have we lost salmon, but we've also lost
Sturgeon. But yes, the side scan for that was a game changer. Game changer again. For me, learning Rollins, I went there and just dropped, because it was a smaller lake, dropped side scan and started driving because I couldn't look at the Google Maps, right? So I just hit side scan. It took me a day to side scan the whole thing. It was great. I was done. I marked what I wanted to mark, and we fished the tournament.
Yeah. Yeah. You had everything you needed to know.
Yep.
You literally, one day. And there's
One
other
day.
members that have done that whole thing in one day.
Yeah.
But there's no way that you could, without side scan, even if you have forward scan, you are not breaking down that lake without side scan.
Yeah. And realistically, like for what I was talking about, Humminbird, you could see the fish better on the side scan. I don't really need to see the fish on side scan. I really just want to see the structure. I want to see what they might be holding to. If there's rocks that are going from the shoreline all the way down into deeper water.
How far do those rocks go into there? Does it just go to water surface and then stop? Does it run all the way down?
Right. That
Tells
those
you
are
so much.
so much that would help us out and show us what we need to get into and fish. Like, and then past that, then you do the 2D or down scan, see those fish, or even forward scan, right?
Yeah.
And breaking that area further down if you find that spot, or you find a spot that there's trees underwater, right? That side scan, driving the side scan and looking 100 feet out, going, well, this whole thing is trees.
Yeah, if you have, like, so for instance, there's trees in Berryessa because everything went up. If you want to know where the tree line is, you can literally drive past it put your waymarks in along that tree line, and then go back and just fish them, and it just helps your efficiency basically.
Right. But I haven't done Garmin side scan. I haven't looked at it.
I've not played with Garmin side scan. I actually don't have much experience with Humminbird side scan.
Yeah.
I've seen it a couple times, but never really played with it. Color palettes and stuff like that definitely change a lot. If you're having troubles with side scan and you have it, change your color palette. There's probably another color palette that pops up. On the Rants, they have 800 megahertz and 455. I guess it wouldn't be megahertz. It'd be 800 hertz and 455 hertz. Yeah. I actually run 455.
Yeah.
I don't like the 800. 800 doesn't go as far. It's more detailed, but I like the picture of the 455, and I like to be able to spread it out, and then I feel like I can see the fish on the bottom better with 455 for my eyes.
Yeah, and the other thing is with the side scan, like we're learning that if you certain color palettes, you could actually see the clam beds for sturgeon.
Yeah.
So we were driving through and looking at where the clam beds are, and if you're going to use it and go out like halibut fishing, stuff like that, where's the bait at?
The other thing is you can use the hard consistency for for halibut on the bay. You'll notice there's certain bands of silt, whatever it is, I don't know.
Yeah.
But you can actually see a difference with different color palettes, and you can actually pick up what areas, once you get bit going across those areas, you can pick up what areas you want to look for and do the same thing. And I don't know if it's a clam bed thing or what it is.
Yeah, I don't know.
But
I'm sure
there's definitely like, you'll notice there's areas that are more bit by halibut than others, and it actually ends up being the bottom consistency is what seems to change.
The other thing that I do, going back to mapping, and since we're talking about halibut, even sturgeon, I do it with bass also, is set a waypoint. Every time I catch a fish, I set a waypoint. For halibut, it's different years. And for Lowrance, you have multiple different icons that you could use for marking. And every year I have one unit that I use for my sturgeon or my halibut boat. And every year I change the mark, and every time we catch a fish, I don't care if it's over another mark, I mark it and I mark it and I mark it.
Even if it's a shaker or a size, doesn't matter. As soon as it's a hookup, waypoint.
So that way I have like ideas, like I'm mapping out where the fish have bit in the past. So I have a higher production rate later on if I want to go back there, right? Like I know that, say the Berkeley Flats, you could go across the Berkeley Flats all over the place. You're going to catch fish, but in certain areas, you're going to notice, like when you do that drift and you're leaving those lines, right? Your track, that if I do this track, this area, I get bit. I don't really get bit here. I don't really get bit here. It's right here. So now you're shortening your drift.
You're shortening your drift, and as the drift changes, you know where you need to modify to where you start. So if you want to hit an area and you drifted way too high of it, you know you need to go this way before you drift again. And it can increase your potential. Correct.
But that's all with that mapping, right? That mapping is, fishing back in the day when you didn't have mapping and you're throwing buoys out there and you're hoping that you're in that right area, right? Like that was before spot lock. That was like, it was challenging, right? Like back then.
Yeah, spot lock's definitely a electronic thing that is
it's
for
game
sure
changer.
I may or may not use it for naps.
Naps
Tying. Is a great thing. Tying.
Right, like
getting hung up, whatever it is. Spot
letting the kids swim.
Yeah.
Hit spot lock, just don't go to the front of the boat.
Yep. Yeah, but hit spot lock in the middle of the cove, throw the kids off the back, and make it better that way.
Right.
I've not played with side scan for halibut. Do kind of want to play with it. As far as like bottom consistency, yes, but I don't know about past that.
Yeah.
Anything else side scan?
No, that's about it.
I do feel that I can pick out fish sucked to the bottom on side scan the easiest out of any of the electronics. That is, if you think you have fish sucked to the bottom, drive past it with side scan if you're good with it or you understand it enough. And I think that you can actually pick up those fish easier than any other electronics, including forward scan.
Yeah, even if it's not on the bottom and you're just picking up the bait fish, right? That is out there, right? Like you drove over this spot, but the bait fish are over here and you see it on that side scan. That's going to help you move over to that area. And then you might have those fish on that bottom, right? That are underneath that bait or shooting through it, right? Like you will see them.
Yeah.
On
and you can side scan with trolling also.
Yep.
And you can kind of tell where the schools are.
Of trout.
Just if you haven't done it, just shut down in the middle of Berryessa, like whenever there's all those trouts and stuff like that. And you could definitely see where the schools are and how they relate to each other. It's kind of cool to see the bait and then the schools and all that. It's pretty cool to actually play with.
Right.
We got some comments in here. Garmin UHD Ultra units with GT50X6 is pretty good. I have a 126 Ultra on mine that comes with a side scan, but I don't use that. I have that for my pure forward scan. I haven't played with the side scan. I have one of those pucks if anybody wants to buy it. I don't need it. Bottom constitutions, contours, ledges. Yeah. Shows pretty good. Should we get into? We're a half hour in.
Yeah, we
probably should. All the people
should.
who want to whine and complain probably aren't on here anymore.
Yeah.
Forward scan, the dreaded
topic
that no one wants to get into. Forward scan, I've been no secret that we both use it. I use it as a tool. It is not an end-all be-all whatsoever.
Actually disappoints me more than not.
Yeah, it truly shows you how crappy of a fisherman you are.
Yeah.
If you start to use it.
Yeah, it shows you how many fish are actually underneath your boat and not in front of you when you keep casting out away from your boat.
Yeah, you ever have those co-anglers that just drop straight down from the boat and you want to yell at them and tell them to cast out, but they catch a fish? It's because those fish just hang out underneath the boat. Yeah. I call them hitchhikers. Doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter what lake you are in. If you shut down in the middle of the lake anywhere, give it 2 minutes, there's a fish underneath your boat.
Yeah.
And like if it's Malones or Pedro, it's like a spot, like a 10-inch spot in the middle of nowhere, like lost, like Finding Nemo.
Yeah, shade stealers for sure.
Yeah, that's what I think it is. It's the shade.
Yeah.
The shade and the bait probably suck up into there and they just hanging out up underneath there, or maybe it's like when an airplane flies over, you look at the airplane.
Yeah. For sure. It's a tool. It's a good learning curve, right? Like
if you notice, anybody who gets it usually sucks
for a while,
for the first year or two.
Yeah.
Before they figure out what it's about and when to not use it. That's really the key, is to when to leave it alone.
Yeah.
And that's when you start to actually get better. There's a lot of myths and stuff that you get told, but once you can physically see them, you realize how much they don't. Like, for instance, there's a stump on the north end, and it's right next to some rock. And traditionally, they would tell you that the biggest fish is going to sit on that stump, and it's going to sit there and wait until you cast on it. And then one day you cast on it, there's nothing. Next day you cast on it, there's nothing. Next day you cast on it, you hook that big fish. You're like, cool, they finally got him to eat. He's finally in a mood. When you get forward scan, you go back there and you realize that the first 2-3 times you went there, that fish wasn't there.
Right.
That next time that he was there, didn't give a crap about your bait. And then the next time it actually eats the bait.
Yeah.
Or you get to see giant Goliaths following your A-rig that make that A-rig look like a toy, and they'll never eat. Doesn't matter what you do to it. You twitch it, you pop it, whatever, they just pull off of it.
Yeah. Though, using like a rig, going to like Malonis and doing like pre-fishing, I'll throw an A-rig and look at that forward scan and burn that A-rig in, like bring it high in the water column and just burn it and just see what, because there was one year we went there and the water was lower and there was a bunch of sticks and trees and stuff in the water. I didn't want to get down into them, but I wanted to see what was in there. And I was burning that A-rig across the top and the fish would come up out of those trees.
Yeah.
I wasn't catching any fish, but it was just showing me that they were there.
Yeah, and the true answer for that tournament was you had to go back and throw slow things like drop shot, Ned rig, stuff like that.
Sinkos.
They'd come up, they might hit the tails of your A-rig, but they wouldn't actually commit. So you actually had to slow it down, but you could burn a lot of bank doing what he's saying and figure out where they are located. Are they on points? Are they on flats? Are they on whatever it is? And you could use it to let them show themselves. Like in pre-fishing, I'm not actually trying to hook fish. I just want to know where they are.
Yeah.
Like we just actually went to Delta this last weekend.
Yeah.
And we were trying out whole new areas. He threw a spinnerbait almost the whole day, and I threw a buzzbait almost the whole day, just because they would eat the buzzbait, but they really were coming up and like nipping it. And then they were eating this spinnerbait and also short striking it.
Yeah.
And the whole point of that was just, are there fish here? I don't care how big they are. I just want to know, are there fish here?
Yeah, because you could work off of that.
And you could see him on forward scan do the same thing. I could see him come up behind, this is on the Delta. See, I could see him come up behind my bait and then peel off. That's in pre-fishing, that's perfect. That's exactly what I want to see.
Yeah.
In tournaments, it is significantly frustrating when you have the right school of fish. I say right in quotations because it's not really the right school of fish. When you have the right size school of fish located, but you can't get them to eat, the reason why you suck for 2 years or a year or two, whatever, while you're getting used to it is because you have to learn that the true right set eats, not looks at your bait. It doesn't matter if you found 13 10-pounders. If they're not going to eat, they're just as valuable as finding a completely open, barren piece of lake.
Yeah.
And catching nothing.
And trying not to get stuck on that one fish too. Trying to get it to bite. That's not going to help you out, especially fishing a tournament, right?
Yeah.
You just have to keep going. But using forward scan, one of the things that I like to do is change my baits. Like I'll throw something. If they don't react to it at all, I'm bringing it in, right? I'm changing.
Yeah. You can
and that faster rotation of what baits I'm going to throw. Or color, right? For example, we were fishing, I think we talked about it. We fished New Malonis in February?
Yeah.
February, somewhere in there. January, February. And the water was cold. There was a storm. It rained on us like the whole time. And I was throwing stuff and I was like, man, they want something super slow. I'm going to throw a jerkbait, right? There's spots there. I threw a jerkbait out and my cadence was like pop, pop, pause. And I was just letting it sit, popping it, and letting it pause because I thought that that's what they really wanted. Well, I kind of got bored with it. And
they were coming up on it, but they would not commit.
They were not committing. They'd look, but nothing. And I got bored and I just started bringing it in one time and one came shooting up off the bottom after it. And I went, oh.
Yeah.
There it is. That's what they want. They want that faster cadence. I threw it out and I used the jerkbait like I would usually use it in the springtime or in the fall. And boom, I started hammering fish.
And that's when we picked up a square bill. Like, we kind of learned the mood of the fish. Now, if you were throwing that thing and then all of a sudden you like quick paused it and you hit it, you would think, oh, well, maybe, like, you may not understand that. Like, you're thinking, okay, well, I slow paused it and then I went fast and that's what triggered the bite because it was looking at it the whole time. But in all reality, that fish was nowhere near that bait when he started going fast, and that triggered it to come up. So there's a lot of like mood cues that you can pick up just from being able to watch their reaction with the bait, even if they don't eat it.
Yes. Corey says that forward-facing sonar is the ultimate information processing tool. Yes. It is 100% correct, right? Like, you 100% figure out what their mood is as fast as you can figure it out without just going through a bunch of baits. Because, you know, back in the day, or if somebody doesn't have forward-facing sonar, they're going to throw their confidence bait, and they're going to throw their confidence bait, and they're going to throw their confidence bait.
And then their other color of their confidence bait.
And then another color of their confidence bait. If they don't bite, they don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to rotate through some colors, and you could figure that out faster, right? Processing way faster by changing a color and throwing something by a fish and watching how they react to it.
Yeah, so one of the things that you see a lot is like drop shot falling, right? The Sorry Steve falling. Like the whole point of Sorry Steve is that fall, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So as it's falling, you can see the fish go up with it and then follow it down. You could tell when they're not quite that is if it's still falling and they peel off of it, then that's not it.
Yeah.
But if they're following it down and then they eat it and take off with it, then you know you're right. If it's still falling and they just go straight up to it and smoke it, you could probably not throw drop shot. You could throw something else. Like, you can pick up the little nuances of that and use that to your advantage of how far. If you don't have forward scan, all you did is cast it out and the fish ate it. You don't see any of the reaction that happens.
Prior to, or you don't know if they got it up in the column, on the bottom, you don't know.
Yeah, it just picks it up.
Right.
You just know that you got bit doing it, you cast it out, it hit it on the fall. You don't know what part of the fall it hit, and it can help clue in those little things.
The other thing that helps out with forward-facing sonar a lot for like us is once you get used to looking at it, right, and seeing what the fish look like, you could start picking out, hey, these are crappie, these are bluegill, right?
To a certain extent.
Bluegill and crappie are pretty much the same, but you could basically see the mood of the fish and or the size of the fish, how they're shaped, and be like, those are crappie or bluegill, those are probably bass.
Unless they're on unless you're on Clear Lake where the crappie are so big that it's hard to tell. And there's recently, when we were up there for the crappie tournament, when we stopped by to say hi, when we were fishing that area, there was one thing, I forgot what, something told me that they were crappie, but I'm pretty sure I fished 4 crappie thinking they were bass numerous times, never paying attention to that. And the crappie were acting like bass. You could catch them the same way you could catch bass. Like, it was kind of crazy how similar they were. And it really made me think of how many times I have probably tried to catch crappie thinking they were bass in a tournament, struggling and wondering why they're not eating, to find out that
they're
not eating because they're not bass.
Right. There was one of the times that we were at Clear Lake and we were bass fishing. The bass fishing was not very good. It was probably February.
Yeah, it was pre-fishing for a February tournament, so it had to be like early mid-February, somewhere around there. And
we were like, well, let's catch some fish at least. We saw all the crappie boats back in the Rattlesnake area, and we started going through there with jerk baits and forward scan. The forward scan was telling us where the schools of crappie were, and they were moving around, and we were just bobbing in and out of all the crappie boats, catching these fish, and we were hammering good 1 pound to 1.5 pound.
It's like 3. I think our biggest was like 3 or something.
Yeah,
like
there was
that.
some.
There were some tanks in
Some
there.
really, it was great fun, right?
Yeah.
We started, and they were high in the water column, just moving around. We were throwing jerk baits. It was great. James stepped back to fix a hook or something on his jerk bait, and I started going, and I was like, oh, there's another school of crappie, but they're lower.
Yeah,
they're lower and
deeper.
They're deeper, but they're like a foot off the bottom or so, to the bottom to a foot, foot and a half. And I fired that jerk bait out there, and I started coming across the top of them. Boom, caught one. All right, I got another one. It was a 2 pound bass.
Yeah.
Threw right back in there, another bass, right? So you could actually see the difference between in that
if you look
situation.
So the dots that were in that first 10 foot were crappie. The dots that were lower than that were bass. So then now we were able to go around and actually target the lower hanging groups and start picking up more bass that way.
Yeah.
Camo Joe says he's still learning. We are too.
Yeah.
We definitely suck. In fact, this weekend I'm actually going to go on a live scope only trip and learn as much as I can and probably catch 3 fish the whole freaking day. But just to try and learn. How many casts on one fish? It depends on their mood.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll single cast something. If you can tell they're in a negative mood, like bait goes by them, they don't care, and you are throwing a bait that you're catching fish on, they're just not in the mood, I move on. If I can get them to like head turn at it, I might throw some more casts at it. 5 or 6, I don't think I even get to 5.
Yeah.
I think I move on. That might be why I suck at it, but I don't think I get past 5 or 6. It has helped me a lot at tuning traditional tactics. Yes, that's kind of what we were talking about, like the cadence of jerk baits.
Yeah.
The drop shot presentation, like,
or
how fast you want, how big of a weight you want on your drop shot, how much it changes. A-rig speed, A-rig color.
I would tell you, just saving A-rigs.
Yeah, that too.
Because when you throw an A-rig out and you want to be close to that bottom, instead of hitting the bottom, if you have forward-facing sonar, you could start reeling and see exactly what the depth is. Or one of the tournaments we had in March, I was throwing my A-rig and I was trying to stay close to the bottom for him. My partner was kind of going a little faster. He was hammering fish, right? That forward scan was helping us identify that the fish wanted that above in that mid column. They didn't want it on the bottom. They were definitely looking up. And that's another thing you learn with that forward scan is, are the fish looking up? Are they looking down?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, do they want something on the bottom? Do they want something suspended? March, Clear Lake, I was catching fish. Yeah, March, Clear Lake. I was catching fish in a consistent cast. And every time I stepped up, I would catch a fish, or every other time, or every third time, I was catching fish. My co-angler was throwing to the exact same spot and did not catch a fish. The difference is where I was riding in the column. I was making sure I was like, I think it was like 8 foot deep, and I wanted to be like 3 or 4 from the top. I wanted it to come, that A-rig to come through that zone, and they were coming up and eating it. If you went down with them, they didn't care. If you went too high, they didn't care. It wanted to be in that like 3 to 4 zone. And that's how you can dial in that speed and all that, is by seeing what depth your bait is at.
yeah, and what the fish want to do with it.
Yeah, how they react to it with that stuff.
Yeah. Though I would tell you that the forward facing sonar is not. You're not going to go out there. You're not going to get one and then go out there and catch a lot of fish with it.
It's not an end all be all. That's for sure.
You're not. Will it help you learn faster? Will it make you change what you're doing faster? Absolutely. Will it help you find some fish? Sometimes, yes. right? Sometimes,
Kinda.
right?
Yeah,
It's
it'll
that
help you. It'll help you give confidence in the areas that you already found
correct.
with 2D and side scan. It'll help you give the confidence,
There are fish here.
or it can hurt you by giving you lack of confidence because there's no fish here, but they were here yesterday, and then you actually pick up a glide bait, a rig, pick up something with a lot of draw power and throw it over the top of that area that you see zero fish and watch them come up off the ground. They were so sucked to the bottom that you can't see them.
Yeah.
So
That's one of the things, like with mine, you throw that drop shot out, that last 8 inches, that drop shot disappears.
Yeah.
You can't see it. So those fish are still there, maybe.
Yeah. They can be sucked into the bottom. And there's a whole lot of reason of why there are different angles you can hit that can show that little sliver of section a little bit better, but that's still only a little bit better. There's some settings you can change. There's a couple things you can modify to help reduce that amount of section. But no matter what, just the way it is designed, you will always have that section no matter what you do.
Yeah.
But that can give you the confidence to keep going, to stay in that area. Like, okay, they're just in a different mood here. Let's break it down. And then there's days where they literally just completely disappear. It doesn't matter what you do. They're gone. So, what else there was? Oh, I'm going to get into real quickly, perspective mode for forward scan. Shallow water fisheries, Clear Lake, Delta, not south end of Clear Lake.
East side.
East side of Berryessa.
Yeah.
Those shallower areas, play around with perspective if you have it. It can show you a lot. Currently, I'm running Lowrance Active Target 1, the first one, in perspective, and then I have Garmin LVS 34 in forward. And those things two together on Delta, if you're in the deeper water of Delta, you can use the forward. If you're on the shallower water, you can use the perspective. Overall, do you really need it on Delta? Well, do you need it in general overall?
You don't
Not
need it in
really.
general.
But Delta can show you a lot if you're punching and you're trying to punch like deep weed lines.
Yeah.
Perspective, you can punch that weed line and know that you're in line with that weed line without having to physically see them with your eyes. So you can actually punch a little bit farther ahead of your eyes to get there before the boat gets there. I've had it work a couple of days, but it's tomato, tomato. If you just went down the line and you knew where that weed line was from 2D, you could do the same guessing. You don't have to have perspective on there, but it does make it nice. And then the same thing is like, if there's drop-offs or the weed line stops completely, you can see that. And you can see holes in the weed, a bunch of little things. It's like it's like 360, but instant is really what it is. But it is limited. You're only seeing a sliver in front of you. You can't see straight down. You can't see too high. You can only see that sliver. Clear Lake North End for grass lines, dock, like if there's sunk docks and stuff like that, rock beds and stuff like that, it helps really well for all that. It's kind of like you're using it like an instant side scan, basically, is what you're using it for. Again, play with colors with that. Oh, that's the other thing on perspective. You can actually pick the fish off the bottom or see the fish on the bottom easier than forward scan. There was a section that I was going across with forward scan and you could barely see them on the bottom, but on perspective mode, they popped right out and you could show, and I could even tell you which way they were swimming. Is there any questions for any of this stuff that y'all want to know? Wasn't there a comment?
360s. is basically side scan, spinning in a circle.
Yeah,
I've gone out on them. I've looked. It's cool if you're spot locked on a spot and you know, hey, the rock pile's there. There's a tree over there, and you could identify that stuff. I feel like I could do that with forward scan now.
Yeah.
So
if you want to dissect an area and fully understand how it lays out compared to where you are on the boat,
yeah,
even with the wind blowing you, you can definitely figure out your targets and do that. As far as running down the bank using it, if you're going slow, but not if you're going fast, you can't really pick up stuff.
yeah, no. And I don't know, you could adjust it to where it goes faster around, but it does take a little bit of time to get all the way around.
And the faster it goes around, the blurrier your picture is. It's not as detailed. Camel Joe says, crappies stack up on each other. Bass usually next to each other in a line. Yeah, bass usually lay down in that, and then crappie aren't afraid to stack. On Clear Lake the other day, the crappie were actually laid down. They didn't stack.
Yeah.
And it was kind of, that's the part where I said I normally would have been fishing for them if they were bass, or thinking they were bass, is that they were actually acting laid out. I can't remember. There was something that they did that clued me into them being crappie. I want to say it was how it reacted to my bait. I think is what it, like the only time I've ever seen that is when I'm screwing around with crappie on a deep ledge at Berryessa. And I think that's what made me go, wait a minute. And I picked up the crappie closet jig, that little blue jig that's badass, and threw that in there, and sure enough started hooking crappie. Kind of happy accident.
Yeah, definitely. But definitely get some of these units or talk to some people that you know that have them. Try to get out with them, look at them, learn them, make your best decision, because every unit has their best stuff, right? Like there's some really good things about Lowrance. There's some things that aren't that good. There's really good things about Humminbird. There's some things that aren't good with Humminbird, right?
There's actually I don't know who did the video. It's either Mark Daniels Jr., Jacob Wheeler, or Dustin Connell. One of their 3 channels within the last month or so, maybe 2, they actually talked about the different electronics and what they prefer, and that's pretty accurate with that. Without going too deep into that, if you want to buy one brand, get used to one brand, and be able to do everything minus 360, it would be Lowrance.
Yeah.
It's the easiest to learn, the easiest to run. When it comes to adjusting forward scan, you pretty much just turn it on.
Yeah.
It self-adjusts.
It's plug and play.
There's things in Garmin that you can pick up that Lowrance doesn't pick up. There's some things that Lowrance is better at than Garmin in forward scan. But as far as like one-stop purchase, I'm only going to buy one brand, have everything linked to each other, Lowrance is probably the general consensus.
Yep.
Next would be Garmin's. And then after that would be Humminbird. If Humminbird comes up with a better forward scan, I'm pretty sure they're working on something, knowing them, or knowing their track record, I should say.
Yeah.
That could rearrange all of it.
Yeah.
If Humminbird could come up with a good forward scan that's a little more descriptive.
Right.
But yeah, so Humminbird would be like your entryway if you want to do that.
Lowrance would be your entryway.
Oh, isolated power. Yes, I'm glad you reminded. If you are looking at your pictures and your pictures aren't as clear as online, it's probably your power source.
Yep.
I was on his boat and he could see out like 80 foot clear, 80 foot. And my 80 foot was fuzz. Like I could see it, but it was kind of not really what it is. I put different sourcing on my, I reran individual powers that ran back to my battery. Doesn't even have isolated power. Like I have 2 31 AGMs in the back. I have it ran to those same 31 AGMs as the rest of my house and everything. That power difference alone made me to be able to see as well as he can on his.
Yeah.
And that's all I changed was running individual wires. And I think they were
8.
8.
I think they're 8.
I want to say, if you look it up, if you look up the standard, I think it's 8. Technically, if you go by the actual amp draw, you can run 2 12 inches off of a 6 gauge, and I think another unit, like another 9, before you run out of amps that run across that cable. So if you run 6, you're perfect. Like 6 or 8 to each individual unit,
Yep.
you're golden.
The other thing that I do, I run a lithium battery, 100 amp lithium battery, just for my graphs and my active target. That's all that is running. And nowadays, the prices on them are really reasonable, right? Like I think I picked up my lithium battery. I think the one that I bought is like $225 now, which is what you're going to get a lead acid battery or even an AGM, right? Close in that.
Compared to, that's the lifetime, Amazon lifetime.
Yeah, Amazon. And it's like 19 pounds compared to 70, 60.
Yeah, 45, 50, whatever it is. And then that is that $200 or whatever it was, 189 or whatever it was, compared to a different lithium battery is like 300, 400.
Right.
Like those lifetimes are decent from what we've seen.
Yeah, and I've been running it March at Clear Lake. I ran it all day long with my forward scan 12-inch as bright as I could make it so I could see everything that I could see. And when I left, when I went out there, I had 12.9 volts because I leave the volts running on it. And when we came back after an 8-hour tournament, I still had 12.9 volts on that battery. I didn't lose any amperage that whole day.
Yeah, that lithium just keeps it at that steady thing until it drops and it tanks.
Yeah.
But that lithium keeps you that solid voltage all day long, no drop. I do have some drop, but with me running 2 batteries, I have enough reserve capacity that it doesn't run into my issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, Camel Joe says it's 8. Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure I have 6 on mine.
Yeah, I think I got 6 too.
Never hurts to go over that. Hey, you know what? I think I might have figured out my missing speed.
Yeah, probably.
Because I got so many cables. I mean, I combinated graphs. I didn't think about cables.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much it for the day. Pretty deep into that. If you guys have any comments, questions, you can always hit me up on Instagram. When this video rolls back out, you can always comment on this video. That's pretty much it. And until next time, thank you for watching. And I'll see you guys next time. I hope you get them.